Thursday, May 7th, Town Supervisor Frank Dendanto held another session of the Spill the Tea events that he's been doing every month. And I was there and I recorded it. What follows is almost the whole event. He started early, so I missed the first few minutes of it. But before we get started, please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Click that bell so you get notified when new videos drop. And leave us a comment. Let us know what you think. This is the Tau Talk Podcast.
We're where the services happen. We are, right here. The county does help, but the county is looking at a bigger picture, and the state bigger still, and the federal government, and so on. Really, if you're being affected by a governmental agency, it's very likely a municipal agency, a local agency, and so that's why what we do here at the town is really, really important. So that said, the county is out trying to fix their problem, which is really good. I think they're going to do it. It's an administrative fix. It does require getting passed through both the Senate and the Assembly, so that means that there's got to be some legwork at the state level. That is all happening. As I said, it is a bipartisan, full court press. Everybody is on board to solve that problem for us. So I'm going to take the optimistic view and say that our problem still remains a $4 million problem, but it is only $4 million. We will see sales tax money. That will happen. The other thing that I can say is that sales tax is beginning to tip down, and that also affects our projected end of year revenues. So we will keep an eye on that process. Again, part of the restructuring that we are doing here at town budgetarily is about restructuring so that we are moving capital expenses and internal expenses away from projected revenue and towards ratable revenues so that we have a better fix on what that dollar amount is and what we are going to have to deal with in the fall. So that is also underway. All of these items, all these cogs and wheels are all spinning at the same time, and so there's a lot happening all at the same time. So that said, that was the big move here over the last 2 weeks, really, was the dust up at the county on the sales tax. Also at the county level too, you might have heard that there was an ask for the Democratic caucus of the county. The new Democratic caucus was asking for a tax holiday at the county level. It did not survive a county vote. It did pass in the county, but it required a specific vote pattern, and it didn't receive that because there were members of the caucus that weren't present. So the effort was visible, but the tax holiday didn't succeed, so it does look like sales tax is going to carry through at least through the summer. And yes.
Is that for gas? Or?
That's for gas only.
Oh, gas.
Yep.
All right. I just
fuel only. And it may come back. Just so we're clear, just because it didn't pass once doesn't mean that somebody won't try again. And they will likely try again. But for right now, that means that we aren't looking at a decrease in that sales line as well. And again, as the second largest economic engine in the county, and I think something that really needs to be thought about while we discuss sales tax, a hit at the gas pump would ultimately affect the town of Wallkill in terms of its unearned, sorry, I keep saying unearned revenue line. That's, by the way, the theater background in me, because I worked in a world where we had to hustle for grant money. And so we had earned lines, which is your ticket sales, and the unearned lines, which were your grants that you would receive to do your programming. So that's the difference there. I apologize for the vernacular shift. So your projected revenue lines and your fixed revenue lines. So we'll probably see a dip overall in the course of the year, given the current projections right now coming into the center of quarter two. Looking at quarter three, it's looking like overall sales tax will probably dip down because of all of the international situations that are unfolding and the national politic as it is. That said, as we are retooling the budget currently and looking at how to finish out 26, we are taking that into consideration. So we're beginning to walk back those numbers so that we get to a place that's a little bit more reasonable if in fact the economy plays out the way we think it's going to play out. Lastly, you heard me say last time, we're doubling down at the town. All of the departments are climbing into their budgets and have started climbing into their budgets in a very real way, very early, to project 27. Because a $4 million problem in your budget is not a problem that can be resolved inside of 1 year. It's just not a feasible, possible thing. But what is possible is to come up with a plan of attack, come up with a secondary plan of attack and a tertiary plan of attack so that you understand how to bob and weave as the economy unfolds for the town and what that means for the town's services. So we are already looking at 27, and our departments are already looking at where savings can be projected forward into 27, where cost scaling can be pulled back in terms of shared services, if there are opportunities that we can partner with some of the communities next to us. The city of Middletown obviously is a no-brainer because they're right there, but also we butt up against Mamakating, Wawayanda. We have other partners in the area, in the county, that we might be able to share some services with. Some of those services might be services that we'll see later on in the year, like such as plowing. That's a big deal. Certainly with salt and sand, that was a problem for much of the county over this past winter. It was a problem that I inherited, funnily enough, that the town of Wallkill was well positioned for. In other words, the town actually had the resources that the county and many of the towns surrounding us did not have. So we were relied upon to pick up a little bit of the slack there. There is a world where right now, if the environment continues to be what it has been, we are in fair shape in terms of our sand and salt going into the winter. But, you know, Mother Nature's fickle. So it could be that we have extra, it could be that we don't have enough. And what we're looking at right now is partnering and shared services in that area as well in terms of plowing and DPW stuff. So we're looking actively at every facet. When I walk through the door, many of you heard me say, everything is on the table. Every contract is on the table. Every negotiation is on the table. It's the full court press for us to solve this big financial problem. And it is a big financial problem. $4 million is $4 million. It's a lot of money, and we've got to pick up the slack. Part of that is going to be shrinking the overall budget lines in all the ways possible. Obviously, we start out with the least impactful ways, but we're always mindful of what those things resonate out to. But we have to be mindful of how that resonates into 27. So we're looking to scale back, like I said earlier, to the ratables to make sure that we're inside that ratable number, which is, by the way, somewhere in the ballpark of $21,000. So there's a $10,000 difference, which is a big, $21 million, there we go. And then wouldn't it be great if it was $10,000? It's a $10 million difference. So that's a big deal. And you throw $4 million into that, it tips the scales really quickly. So we're actively building on trying to create a 27 budget that is closer to that $21 million mark, so that we can scale better in terms of the projected income lines. That's really the big lift for the town in the last 2 weeks. Some of the other stuff that's going on here, we have had some events. Obviously, the Easter egg hunt happened not too long ago. We have Touch a Truck, which is coming up, which is also very exciting. It's one of those cornerstone events that we do at the town that we've done for a very long time. I personally think it's one of my favorites because it's a great opportunity for us to have a lot of other vendors come in and see all of the people that we work with at the town. That have impact at the town that you don't see every day. You might, you see their trucks on the highways, maybe, or sitting at Starbucks, but maybe it's not quick. It's Starbucks, not our guys. Our guys don't sit at Starbucks. But you'll see them and you'd be like, oh, I don't know what TAM does. What does TAM do? Tets, I'm pretty sure everybody knows who those guys are, although they're not called Tets anymore. They'll always be Tets to me.
Me too.
So, yeah, so, you know, these are regular players that we see a lot, Westar. They're partners with us. They have been partners with us for a very long time, and now they have an opportunity to come share in an event for families to come out and for children to come out and see some of the equipment that they use. Some of it is really exciting. Some of it we use. It's very exciting. These front end loaders are big and have a lot of stuff going on. You can get up close and personal, and the operators of those vehicles will allow the kids to climb all over them and you know, maybe pull on the horn wire or turn on the sirens. It's a lot of fun. And then, of course, right around the corner is June, and that's for us, Juneteenth. We celebrate here at the town. It's a big deal for us. It's certainly a big deal for me, I think, from a personal place, because, again, so much of what is happening in the world right now is about walking what our sensible ideas are from a community standpoint backwards. And it's now tangible. Before it was somewhat hypothetical or ethereal, an existential. It is no longer an existential action. It is now a real action. We're seeing real recoil from an equity place across the board. So Juneteenth actually really is very important, I think, to remember why it is we are Americans and what it is that we're here really to do as a community. And I think that particular holiday says a lot about our acknowledgement of the past and also of the future. And some of the great strides and successes that we had in the 60s and 70s, and where some of those things are beginning to slide backwards, where we as a community need to pay attention. So for me, very important holiday to celebrate. We're going to do a small thing here. Certainly we invite you to come to that as well. I think that's it. I'm gonna look to Don and say, what did I miss? Because I might have missed something that was...
I think that everybody who has participated in these and seeing the crowd return and some new faces as well appreciate the openness, the candor, and the facts. It's great to have open government and for us to be able to follow along with where are the numbers and what do we have to do. Some of those ratables that you talk about, the county has in the recent past not regarded Town of Wallkill necessarily as open for business. You have changed that tenor, so I know they're happy.
Let's talk a little bit about that. So early on, you heard me say I got big plans for the location. Pyramid is interested in doing an expansion to try to change their ratable base. They just challenged their assessment, and their challenge was upheld, which meant that we lost a little money on their taxes, which wasn't small. But the flip side to that was it did also springboard a conversation about the development that they'd like to do, because they're seeing, as everybody in that mall market is seeing, a recoil. So they're looking to reinvent. And then when I showed up, somebody, I don't even remember who it was, I think it was somebody at the county who's, actually I do know who it was. Steve Gross found me, who's at the county, as part of the economic engine there, and Connor Ecker from the partnership, and talked to me a little bit about a study that the county had done about this idea of a civic center. And the county was hoping to do a civic center down in Monroe. Turns out, after their study, Monroe was not the place that the county should have looked at. In fact, the study told them that Town of Wallkill was the place to look at. And so they approached the prior administration. The prior administration put it to bed quickly. Turns out that they were talking to the right person. So they brought it back to me since the administration changed, And I got very excited about it. So I'm sure most of you have heard me talk about this idea of a civic center at the Galleria, and that this is going to dovetail with a whole lot of development that's probably going to happen at the Galleria. It's going to change the rateable level of the Galleria. It's going to change the footprint altogether. And we're talking about two housing developments, a hotel, the civic center itself, possible manufacturing component out on Smith Road, and then a conduit that connects all of that to possibly a third housing build out next to the train station, so that it's transit oriented housing, it's manufactured based housing, it's entertainment based, and all of these items will completely transform the pyramid lot, will change some of the infrastructure there, the road a little bit, and will GC the whole project so that it looks like what we want it to look like. And
So what happens to the mall?
The mall stays put. It gets bracketed on the one side. Right now, this is what the design is. Of course, it's very early in this design phase, so none of this is carved in stone. The area just outside of where the movie theaters are is proposed to be a hotel. And then I'm suggesting that we do the Civic Center on the far side, on the Macy's side. And then we all would like to do market rate housing either on the 84 side of the property, and then workforce housing on the Smith Street side of the housing, with a conduit that goes to the train station and a secondary train platform, so that trains coming from NJ Transit can open up on both sides, so you can enter the trains on either side of the platform. And that is to be marketed both regionally here as well as into New York City, to begin to court more New York City transplants, specifically younger, more attuned to that transit idea, into this area, so that there is less of a need for car travel. That all of the amenities that you might want would be within walking distance, and you could work in the city, get on the train, walk and or bike to the train station, and then walk and or bike home to your condo and or apartment, and then walk to the mall, which will continue to have the eateries that it has and the amenities it has, and then have access to entertainment through the Civic Center and or the movie theaters. And of course, that Civic Center would act as a hub, a draw, if you will, for activities outside of the county, well, countywide, but also outside of the counties. I jokingly said, only because I had a daughter who was a cheerleader, so we traveled to a lot of these civic centers all over the place, that this is a draw, that individuals will come to the Civic Center and spend their time at the hotel and at surrounding hotels. The people who were at the hotel would have a conduit through the mall, so it's a funnel through the mall to get to the Civic Center. So it creates an entire economic avenue. And then all of that is supported by the town in terms of infrastructure. All of that becomes rateable to the town. In other words, it's all tax revenue to the town. And all of that is increased sales tax revenue to the town because of the economic engine that would be internal to the mall and to the Civic Center itself. So there's a lot of opportunity here, and there's a lot of reason for a lot of folks, state, federal, and local, to be on board with this. Where we're at right now is that we've got buy-in from everybody on the municipal end, and we've got buy-in from most of the stakeholders, if not all of the stakeholders, on the private sector end. And our next step, which I believe we have tentatively scheduled for the end of this month, is what we call a roundtable in the development world, where everybody who's a stakeholder comes to a single conference room and we begin to spitball what the design process is going to look like, who's going to take lead agency on that. It will likely be the town, only because it's going to be in the town. We want to make sure it looks like what we'd like it to look like, rather than have it plopped in our laps. And so we'll take lead agency and we'll take GC position. So we'll general contract. It's kind of a loose term, but it's an industry term. And and then we'll begin a construction schedule. And based on everybody's funding mechanisms, bits and pieces of that could start as early as next year. My guess is that something as big as the Civic Center probably will take another 24 months to get pulled together design-wise, and then that'll be out the door. And then we'll need to identify some funding mechanisms for that particular portion of it. But all of these discussions will happen as early as a week from today. We'll start those conversations soon. So, yeah, that's a real thing. And again, it helps to this larger conversation of, well, what do you do for, 27? How are you gonna solve a $4 million hole in this year? It's gonna be a $4 million hole next year. Obviously, tax season's coming, and even if we stay at the cap, we're not gonna get over that hump. We're gonna be short, so what do? Part of that is we build out the ratables. We go actively pursuing opportunities for more earned-based income opportunities here at the town, so that we don't have to look to taxpayers to foot that bill. And that would do it. That would absolutely do it. The other thing too, that is now fully on our radar, is that Walmart is back at the table. They own a piece of property out on 17K, where 17K meets up with Bloomingburg Road, right at the off-ramp, actually. It's not quite down by the Dollar Tree, but right at the off-ramp. And they are considering resubmitting a proposal to build a distribution center there that is substantial. And if that proceeds forward, which it has no real hurdles at this point where it wouldn't have an opportunity to get stalled, the area is currently zoned for warehousing. We just adopted a bunch of new zoning to address the moratorium. Thank you, that actually is a great dovetail to that. We just adopted a bunch of zoning that changes the moratorium conversation at the town. The town has had for the better part of 4 years a moratorium on warehousing because there were a lot of warehouses and they were just getting spec built and big box by a property owner and with nobody necessarily coming in. So they are empty. That's a problem. Empty warehouses are a problem. So what we've done is address where warehouses can be constructed in the town and codified that now in the code, which is good. And in that effort, Walmart sits already grandfathered because they've owned the property forever, and they happen to own property that is currently zoned for warehousing. So they don't have a whole lot of hurdles to get through. They do need to submit a proposal, and that will go through the planning process as any other project would go through the planning process. But that is in the billions with a B world. It's a fully automated facility that they're talking about, and they're talking about employment levels of anywhere between 1,000 and 1,500 people at roughly 60 grand a hit, because most of those individuals are programmers and machine operators. So it's not low-level, $18 an hour truck drivers. It's something very different. That said, the offset for the ratables would be very close to $1 million. So that could substantially change the environment for us in terms of what we would have to earn back. So there is a world where that is actually rather attractive from a budgetary standpoint. And from a zoning standpoint, there aren't a whole lot of hurdles for them. So that's probably going to proceed forward, just as an aside. But if that proceeds forward and the pyramid property build out proceeds forward, we probably can solve our budgetary shortfall inside of 2.5 to 3 years. And when I say solve it, I don't mean just fix it so that we have enough money to have the same police force and the same plowing guys. I mean solve it. I mean we create a cash flow positive situation at the town. And cash flow positive, which means we can build back our fund balance, which means that as soon as we're cash flow positive, anybody who's ever gone to go get a loan knows that if you are cash flow positive, you're very likely to get that money. So we will get our bond rating back, and as soon as we get our bond rating back, we can start doing big ticket items like changing out culverts that are starting to collapse, which is a thing. We can deal with some of the infrastructure items that are on the outside parts of wards 1 and 4, where we had water fall off before, where we have to be mindful of what that water and sewer infrastructure is so that we maintain that. Those things have a fairly high price tag. We're about to embark on a bridge repair that has a very big price tag on it that sits over by Garnet Health going out towards Goshen. That bridge has to be completely replaced. Those items are really expensive items. We can only do those items through bonding. And right now the town can't get bonding because we don't have a bond rating. So all of these new revenue sources, these new rateable revenue sources would solve that. And even if they had pilots attached to them, even if the county comes back and says, well, we're going to do a pilot program and we're going to offset some of that rateable and push it off a year, that still gives us money in the coffers to build back our fund balance. So that's an item that is very attractive and something that we are paying very close attention to. So yeah, and we did just change the zoning. We did adopt the new zoning, portions of the zoning, so that we could address this moratorium that has been looming. It is quite literally an illegal moratorium because it's been going on for so long. It's by the good grace of God that we haven't been sued, and we're thankful now that we're cresting over this hump. First part of it was getting the ducks in a row, per se, to get the zoning correct, and now we can actually lift the moratorium, which is actually, I think, going to happen this Wednesday coming as part of a special meeting. So that piece of the world is getting put to bed. So we're trying to stay busy. I know it looks like we're being a little slack, but at the end of the day, there's a lot of stuff happening, and we're trying to keep that momentum going, because my experience has been that the longer you have momentum, the easier it is to keep that momentum, and if it slows down, the harder it is to pick it back up again. So we're striking while the iron is hot. These conversations with the county and the state about the development at Pyramid also are dovetailing to the development of the fairgrounds. You've heard me talk a little bit about the fairgrounds. Yeah. That process is beginning to unfold. You just went no. All right, well, I'll bring you up to speed. You're a new face, so that's okay. So the fairgrounds folks want to sell. They've been wanting to sell for quite a while. Looks like they actually are in the place where they can sell. They are in contract with a development firm. The development firm is actually a local firm. They have properties here in town already, and they want to develop that entire lot. But the lot is tricky. There's a weirdness around the track. It is considered a gray field, and what that means is that there is a lot of motor oil and car engine stuff that's embedded in that clay. And it is clay, so it's not getting into any water necessarily, but anybody who takes on the property has to deal with that track, and they have to deal with the clay. So that makes it a gray field. That puts it into the out of New York State DEC realm and into the federal government's EPA realm. EPA has a whole process. They used to call this Superfund sites. They don't call that anymore. That's not it's not PC. But they are still areas that need to be addressed. And so the state and the county have identified the fairgrounds racetrack as a gray field, and it has been recognized by the EPA. Mike Martucci, that's a name that some of you might know. Mike Martucci now works with the EPA. So we've got a local guy up at federal government, which is good. Mike's the hometown guy. He still actually lives in the area, so that's kind of good. He's familiar with the area, also good. So he is very dialed in here and wants to see the fairgrounds succeed. So as a gray field, it qualifies for funding for design process and some mitigation process. That makes it attractive for development. And of course, what happens at the fairgrounds if it gets developed? You've heard warehouses, you've heard high density housing, you've heard all kinds of things that have been floated. what I have brought to the table as part of this discussion is, again, this idea of community building. This is an area where we could have a mixed use opportunity where some of the residential single family homes that exist up on the top of the hill, Gardner Avenue, down to Wisner Avenue, that environment could find its way down into the fairgrounds. It could be offset by some high density build outs, some apartment build outs, or some condo build outs in certain areas, maybe back around the back side of the fairgrounds on the hill, going towards where Wallkill Living is, so that has a residential feel to it, and that the entire area is built out as a campus with the track being converted into green space, open space, and being left as the fairgrounds, a large green open space that can be utilized for any number of things, be it a carnival or even a open air movie theater or a show of some sort, open air theater event, all of those things, all within walking distance, because again, so much of what I'm interested in is community building and walkability, so you don't have to get in a car and drive. If you're living in those areas, you can walk over to the Texas Roadhouse, or you can walk over to Price Chopper, or you can walk over to the fairgrounds area, the open green space, or you can walk across the street and go to the bagel shop over on the corner on East Main. That these are all walkable areas, and that it's mixed use, so that will be some commercial inside of that on the ground level. So perhaps maybe Arts Cleaners will have a satellite, and you can walk to the cleaners and drop off your dry cleaning, or walk to the bakery up in the corner, Carmine's, and then walk back home with your egg sandwich or with your cannolis. So all of these things that's again part of the idea of the development. All of this adds to the rateable pool. Yes.
So when will you have a drawing of all of
I'm
this?
working on a drawing right now. Like that, I'm hopeful to have by June, July at the absolute latest. I'm hoping that the roundtable that happens for Pyramid generates a drawing on or around the same time, July, August, so I can say, this is the thing that we're looking at, and this is how we're talking about it. And it's just a pretty picture, but it's only an idea, but this is the direction that we're going. You know, the thing that is important to remember in all of these big development projects is that they take time, number one, but they also go through a bunch of design changes. Like, I don't know how many of you guys were paying attention to the 9/11 memorial and how that
Yes.
unfolded.
Yeah, I was.
When I was a little involved in the beginning part of that process. Or the High Line. Does anybody here know what the High Line is?
That sounds familiar.
Those of you, it was an abandoned elevated train line forever on the west side. And now it's a gorgeous, gorgeous green space that spans almost 30 blocks. And that went through a bunch of different design phases, and a bunch of different architects got involved, and then it was awarded. But the municipality, the city of New York, actually had ultimate governance over that. And the same will be true for both of these projects, that because they have such great impact on the town really is a stakeholder. And I think one of the things you've heard me say a lot, I've been talking a lot here lately, so I'm going to wrap it up, is that the town has allowed these processes to sort of unfold on their own with very little oversight. And that's not to say that the planning board is doing a bad job. I'm just saying that the planning board is basically taking anybody's idea and saying, well, you fit all the zoning, so that's good, rubble stamp, you're good luck to you. There's been no molding. There's been no direction. There's been no idea. And no vision. And part of that is the master plan, right? The master plan is supposed to provide vision. It's a law, by the way, for those of you who don't know, there's a law in the state that requires municipalities to have a master plan. And so we're supposed to have a vision, and we're supposed to be conducting ourselves accordingly inside that vision. Because there's been a gray area, and because there's been this long discussion about master plan and what it means and how to do it, we've been a little rudderless. And so the town looks the way it does because of that. I think that the municipality needs to have a vision. And I think that that vision needs to come from the administration and be outward, and that the administration needs to take an active role in that. Because at the end of the day, how the town looks is a reflection of the leadership. Full stop.
Oh, right.
Yes.
So there's no world where I can be in any other environment, be it a government environment with other municipal leaders or just out and about, and not have to own how the town looks and or acts or behaves. So that's on me, and I have ownership on that, so I should do something about that. And that gave it agency to me, so that's what I'm putting forward. That's why I think that the town needs to have a better handle on how we build out these opportunities. Always thinking about the business end, always thinking about how the town is going to benefit from this, not just from the money end, although that's very important, but also from the aesthetic end. What do we look like, right? Now, some of you heard me say last time, I believe that we're at this great crossroads. The town of Wallkill is at this, we just celebrated 250 years. We're at this great crossroads. We started out as an agricultural community. We were the agricultural community that serviced the train community that was the city of Middletown. So our farm stuff hit the train. Horton House, which is the Harold Card's house, you see it up in the back. Horton Ice Cream started here and got on the trains at Middletown and went to the city. If you look around, those fields are shrinking, which means that the town's identity is shrinking. But that's not necessarily true. Your identity doesn't shrink, your identity changes. It's a living thing. It evolves just like we evolve. You're not the same people that you were when you were 20, or when you were 13, or when you were 40. You're not. And at the end of the day, that life process molded you, shaped you, changed how you thought. The same is true for the town. And now the town is faced with a place where, well, we aren't really the farm community we used to be. Goshen really isn't the farm community it used to be, and neither is Warwick and Chester. So what do? We can embrace this opportunity and look to growth, or we can be passive and allow it to unfold in whatever way karma deems fit and deal with the chips wherever they fall. I feel like we should be more proactive. I feel like, and maybe this is me being the artist in me, I feel like we should shape this. I feel like we're at a crossroads where we can look right down 17 into Jersey and look at what our future might be. We can look to Secaucus, or we can look to Ramsey. And what I say to all the constituents and what I'm saying to you is, this is a reflection moment. I don't have an opinion necessarily, but I do think we're there. I do think that we're at this place where we have got to decide. Now, what does that mean? That means that we've got to decide how our property taxes are, what funds our property taxes, what offsets those property taxes, because that's the biggest number one issue. The second, maybe larger aesthetic issue is, what does the town look like? Is it a series of strip malls? Is it a series of warehouses with little houses plopped in the middle? Is it a series of tree-lined sidewalks, streets, and $1 million homes? Is it something in between? What we do now will inform that 20 years from now. That's why the master plan is really important. That's why I'm dumping energy into the master plan. What we do now is really important. It will form us 30 years from now. That's why I'm talking about developing Pyramid and developing the fairgrounds in a way that's actually going to put money in our pockets and add to the aesthetic value of the town.
Making it more attractive for people to move into.
Making it more attractive, period. Just making it more attractive. Now, That, my idea of attractive, your idea of attractive, that might be different. That's open for discussion and interpretation. That's real, and that's why we have committees. It's real, and that's why we have boards that guide and direct that process. But we as a community have to decide which direction we're going to go in. And the only way we can decide is by coming together and hearing each other's thoughts and moving on from there, and having actionable items after that. And so my goal in all of this, while I'm fixing the budget and working whatever I can do to solve those problems, is to put into place the pieces that are necessary to carry on that conversation past November, past me maybe, and into 27 and 28, so that we can continue to grow the town. Because the town's gonna grow no matter what. It's already bigger than it used to be. When I was a kid, none of this was developed. None of the back area was developed. Hannaford's wasn't here. That was trees. It's not that anymore. And it's never going back. At least not in our lifetime. So we have to contend with that, and we have to address it in a real adult way. So that's what I'm looking to do. Anyway, that's really, I think that's all of it. I've been talking for almost an hour now. So,
Oh,
What's the status on Chick-fil-A?
this was started early?
no, not really. I didn't, I don't know, I'm coming up on an hour. The status on Chick-fil-A, it's a good question. Status on Chick-fil-A is this. They are proceeding forward. We're still waiting for a sign off so that I believe Silver Lake wants to do, Silver Lake or Mechanicstown? Silver Lake and Mechanicstown want to do a burn test there, so they're gonna do their drills on site before it gets demoed, and then it's getting demoed. It's really, really close. I think we're just waiting for a couple logistical pieces of paper to get themselves in line, and then the fire companies to figure out a scheduled day. And then Chick-fil-A will be on its way. So the chicken is coming. The chicken is coming.
Where is it going?
Chick-fil-A is going where
Boston Market? That's
Yeah.
what I thought, okay.
Where Boston Market is. So imagine that, living at the fairgrounds in an awesome condo, be able to walk to Chick-fil-A. then maybe the following day, walk over to Texas Roadhouse.
Have steak.
I'm just saying.
Get a
it's
bagel
good.
in the morning.
Yeah.
Steak at night.
I don't know, anybody who's living there better have a gym membership.
Yeah. We gotta put
Maybe
it,
it's, yeah. Well, I guess Planet Fitness is right.
Planet
and
Fitness
Crunch
is in the
right
middle
across.
of all that.
You're all good. Never mind. All right. Yes.
And everybody, just so you know, the master plan, that was just a start. So, how the town can look, and, it doesn't stop at where the warehouses is. It's now, what do we want the town, what do we like in the town, what green spaces, what do we want in our parks? So I'm gonna be on the master plan committee, and if you have ideas, please come see me, because I'd like that end of it,
Yeah, that's for sure. Anybody else who has interest in getting involved, I can't, and again, I see a lot of regular faces. Those of you who've come to these a couple times, maybe this is a thing that you might be interested in doing. It doesn't take a lot of effort. It does take a little bit of time in the evening generally to sit on one of these committees and, be involved in that process. And there are quite a few committees that are open, that have open spots. Master Plan Review Committee is still open and is still actively working. So that's one area to look at. But there are some other things too. There are some other appointments that are committees that have been empty for a while. We have a Human Rights Committee that hasn't actually been functioning for a very long time. So maybe we could get that fleshed out. So my point being is this. If you're willing to come to listen to me pontificate for an hour, which I thank you for, then perhaps maybe you take a half an hour or an hour out of your time on some other day of the week and get involved. And I can't stress enough, even if it's that you're getting involved on the local level, on a community base to work with your political committee. That's a thing too. One of the things that I've said a lot, and I said this most recently 2 nights ago, I had the great honor of honoring Mr. Perino. Does anybody here know who Mr. Perino is?
No.
Mr. Perino is a gentleman who has been at the Middletown school system for the better part of 40 years. He spent 30 some odd years as a teacher, coming up the ranks as a teacher, and then afterwards he's been on the school board for almost 20, still sits on the school board.
He went to school in Middletown too.
Yes, so he's a Middletown fixture, and he doesn't just focus on the school, like he's at parades and events and sporting events, and like he's very involved. And one of the things that I mentioned when we were having this awards thing for him at the city of Middletown was that what I recognize out of Mr. Perino, and I recognize it in most of you, some of you I assume, but all of you really, because you're here, there is a character thing that occurs. I don't know how it occurs, but it does occur. And we all can see it. When you go to an event, any event, a party, a wedding, anything, and it requires chairs. At the end of that event, most people pick up and walk out the door and say their goodbyes. It's good seeing you. I'll see you later. There's always a small group of people, indescript group of people, that stick around and pick up the chairs.
Fold them
They're
up.
not asked to pick up the chairs. No one tasked them to pick up the chairs at the beginning of the party. They just do it. They just pick up the chairs. They don't ask anybody for a thank you. They don't ask anybody for anything. They pick up the chairs, and when the chairs are picked up, they turn out the lights and they leave. You represent those folks because you're here. You care enough to show up and come. That's 50% of the battle. This next step is to be engaged. Get on a committee, talk to somebody, talk to your council people, get involved. Because at the end of the day, this exercise, this democratic exercise, this community exercise, it only works if you're involved. If you're not involved and you're a bystander, well, my dad used to tell me, you have nothing to complain about. Not a thing. Because you got what you got because you got what you asked for. But
Or
if you get
never
involved,
asked.
then you can make a difference. And the only reason I can talk to you about the possibilities of a civic center is because I got involved. That's it.
There you go.
That's it. So I invite all of you to get involved, join a committee. If you can't, volunteer your information, your ideas. It's valuable. We really do want to hear them, all of us. I know the electeds do. So, and that's any of them, really. All 5 of us, we all are on the same page on that for sure. So, were there any other questions? Oh, you had you wanted me to bring up the term limits thing? Yes. Yes. The last thing that we did bring up, we had a special meeting last week about term limits. So I campaigned on term limits. I think Don and Steve also campaigned on term limits. We think that this is a very important idea. And the reason we think that term limits is a very important idea is because we think that complacency is born out of the fact that you don't really have a choice and that it's difficult to push through the noise. And if we could create some rules where that turnover is required, then it'll be easier for voices to get heard. So we opened up the discussion about term limits. I'm going to actually open the floor for this one. We opened up the discussion to whether or not term limits should be had at the Town of Wallkill, and if they are, what they should be, because right now, we're all serving a 1-year term. That is not by anybody's choice. That was the state design, so that was not the goal. Generally, this is a 2-year term. Obviously, you can't fix a $4 million problem in 1 year, so I'm hoping for another term, but we'll see. At the end of the day, we've got to have that process unfold in a way that there is turnover. And so the exercise is, should there be term limits? And if so, should they be longer? 4 years was floated. There was 4 years for everybody, 4 years for just a supervisor position. Or should there not be term limits? There's a very loud contingency of people that believe that term limits are good on the state and federal level, but they're not good at the local level because we just don't get people to turn out. We can't do it. And so you're stuck with who you get, and that's who you get. And so we shouldn't force that turnover because you never know what you're going to get. And I don't see it that way, but some people do. So I'm going to open the floor to questions and answers here, but we'll open it with this. Just at a show of hands, who here thinks term limits is a good idea?
Yeah.
All right. Who here thinks term limits is a good idea on a local level?
Oh, yeah.
Definitely.
All right. All right. There you go. That's pretty much everybody. So that was informative. Ideas about term limits. How long should they be?
Well, the first, what are they now?
Right now, they're two. I'm sorry, I didn't finish. I thought, did I? They're 2 years right now. So by state law, Town of Wallkill's term limits are 2 years. It's a rotating. It's not a rotating. It's a static term, which means that everybody is up for their same election at the same time. So all the councilmen are up at the same time, supervisors up at the same time. So there is a world where your entire board changes inside of 1 year, and that kind of almost happened this year. But it can happen, which means that if you have a directionality that is big, i.e. you want to build something monstrous like a convention center, long-term planning might be complicated because you could lose all the momentum because the entire administration changes and they don't want to do the thing that you wanted to do and they unplug everything. There is a conversation that says perhaps we should stagger those term limits. Perhaps for the first year it's 2 years and then the next round is 4 years and then every 4 years half the board gets elected and every 4 years the other half of the board gets elected. And inside of one of those, it's 2 and 3. So the supervisor will pop into one of those. There's another point of conversation where 2 years is perfectly fine. This goes back to the crowd that thinks term limits might not be such a great idea. Term limits exist because you have to get elected. I have to convince you guys that I'm not doing such a bad job. I should probably keep this gig. And maybe some of the work that I'm doing might go on a little bit longer than the 1 year that I'm allotted. So perhaps I should get a second term so that I can finish that out. That makes sense, right? But that's your decision. You get to decide that. And I have to convince you of that every time I have to run for election. So there's a point of thought that says you have term limits. They're called elections. You get voted out, people don't like you anymore. If they like you, you can stay in as long as you want. As long as you're doing a good job, people think you're doing a good job, you're good to go. Again, footnote, I think that that's part of how you end up with corruption. That's the gateway to corruption.
You mean being reelected over and over and over again?
Reelected over and over again with few challengers or no challengers at all, because I think at this point, that's where you can discover how much latitude there is in the elected seat. Because one of the things that you learn really quickly is there's a lot of things you don't know, but then you also learn very quickly there's a lot of latitude. The seat does actually come with a fair amount of authority and power, and i.e., we get to decide, a committee of 5 folks get to decide whether or not a PRD overlay occurs, because, well, the planning board can come to us and make a request. 5 guys get to decide if there's going to be a zone change. And that's it. 5 guys. So maybe that's not a fair thing. Maybe it is a fair thing. I don't know. I have an opinion about it. My opinion is it's not a fair thing. That's exactly why you want turnover. You want it so that when you have that authority doesn't leach into your psyche and accidentally change things for you. And then all of a sudden you find that you might be doing things for a set group of folks in town because they keep asking you to, because they keep funding your elections, and so they're your friends. And so now all of a sudden the zoning looks a lot like what they would like it to look like, not necessarily what the town would feel is a good idea, or what's good for the town, more importantly. Like, there's a world where one person could own every catering venue in town. We're on track for that. That's a real thing. Now, that's not necessarily a possible thing or a probable thing, but it is a possible thing. So just because the probability isn't there doesn't mean that you can't get it, that couldn't happen. So how do you create fail-safes for that? Again, I come back to, well, you cap the number of years that somebody can be in charge, and then that's it. Then they can't be in charge anymore, and somebody else has to be in charge. And then it's up to the committees or up to individuals. Like, there's a world where I personally think, as fueled by my last election, I ran on an unaffiliated line. Wallkill winning line. I had to go out and knock on independent doors, people who call themselves independents or blanks, and I had to say, hey, look, I'm running for office, and I'm going to do it I'm not doing it party affiliation. I'm not a Democrat or Republican. I'm a Wallkill winning guy. I'm all for Wallkill. That's what it's about. I'm looking to bridge the gap, and I'm single-minded, I'm mission-driven, and this is the goal. And I see a world where local municipalities should have less Democrats than Republicans and have more blanks, or more Green Party, or more Wallkill living, or more people over politics. I think those smaller organizations speak more to the values of the constituency. You may be more in line with the Green Party than you are with the Democrats. You may be more in line with the conservatives than you are with the Republicans, or with the Republicans and not the conservatives, which is the thing. I think that the more we can diversify entirely, and that includes political affiliations, the better representation we get, and the cleaner government we get, and the more responsive government we get. Because at the end of the day, that's what this is all about. Any of you guys who remember history class, remember that the only reason government exists, the only reason that government exists is to provide the services you cannot provide for yourself. Back in the day, it was a lord who had a castle who needed to keep you from getting eaten by the bears or the bandits. And he had the walls, and he had a small army, and so he kept you safe, and so you gave the guy some money, or you gave him some of your farm goods. So that's what government's supposed to do. It's supposed to be responsive. It's supposed to provide you a thing that you can't provide for yourself. Now, we can have lots of debates about what that is, but that's not for today. But what I'm talking about in term limits is I'm talking about that responsive government. I'm talking about creating a scenario where you actually have individuals who are out doing the thing that you expect them to do, which is to do the good of you, of your community. Not the good of their buddies, not the good of their pocketbooks, but the good of you. And then get out of the way and let somebody else do it, because we all have good ideas. So my feeling on the matter, and I'm only one voice on the table, but my feeling on the matter is we should have term limits. Maybe they should be a little bit longer. It's true, because there are a lot of things you don't know. Like what a planning board does, or what the MS4 does. And raise your hand if you know what the MS4 does. Do you know who the MS4 is for the town? No, that would be wrong. Yeah, no. I'm the MS4 for the town. The MS4 is a designation by the DEC. I'm in charge of rainwater, stormwater runoff. If there's a problem with stormwater runoff, it's my problem to fix. I have to fix it. Planning sends me everybody's application to review so that I can say that they have enough macadam for the parking lots, but too much macadam that the stormwater, if it were to get a 100-year rainstorm, would cause a flooding event. And so you need 2 more catch basins, or 1 more storm reservoir, or porous macadam because you have so much of it. That's my responsibility. Now, thankfully, the town hires an engineer. They don't trust me because I'm not an engineer. I used to be a tree hugger, for those of you who know that term. So I'd be like, no macadam. We all park on the dirt. We don't park at all. We walk to the stores. We build the stores in the trees. But jokes aside, we hire engineers, and those engineers consult. They get that packet before I get that packet, and they give me a synopsis. Generally, it's 2 or 3 pages. Sometimes it's 15 pages of what the impact is based on the design. And then I get to review it, and then if I put my signature on it, that means that I'm telling the DEC that we've reviewed this thing, and we don't think it's going to be a problem. We don't think that there's going to be a flooding event. We don't think that there's going to be an issue if we get a 100-year rainstorm, Sandy comes by, and We think we've addressed all those items. So I'm the MS4 for the town. Had no idea what an MS4 did before I got elected in 20. Okay, what does that guy do? Someone handed me a binder that was this thick. It's like, you gotta read that. So there's a lot of things that you don't know. Just the process. And again, some of that is internal by getting involved. If you go and get involved and you go to the planning or the zoning board and you get appointed to a planning or zoning position, then you get to watch what parliamentary procedure is. Who here, show of hands, knows what parliamentary procedure is? Who here owns a book called Robert's Rules?
Oh, no.
Oh, what, two?
No,
Two.
it's gonna be.
Yeah. Three.
Robert's Rules for Dummies counts?
Yeah, that does count. Robert's Rules is how we do the meetings. Who speaks when and why, and how I know to say, how Louisa knows how to read a resolution, and how I know to make the motion for the resolution, and that's always me. By the way, it's different for towns than it is for cities. So the mayor of Middletown does not do the same thing. Resolutions are pushed up in a city differently than they're pushed up in a town. That's also different at the county level, it's different at the state level, and it's different at the federal level. So there's lots of Robert's Rules, but Robert's Rules is how you conduct yourself in that meeting. Who says what when, and why, and how. And guess what? Unless you were at the Elks Club and sat on the e-board, or were on the e-board of your union, you maybe don't know that, and so you have to learn that, right? You have to learn that. So maybe 2 years is maybe too short. 4 years certainly is plenty of time. I personally think that you don't need to be in the any chair in the town more than 8 years. After 8 years, you start, what is the term? A guest becomes like fish after 3 days. Just saying. Might be some truth to that in elected officials as well. Not trying to talk myself out of a job, just so you know, I'm still running for office. But I think that these things are really important, and I think that term limits help that conversation become codified. And then we don't have to think about it, right? Then we just have to worry about getting candidates involved and getting you folks involved. So that becomes a different kind of conversation. But what does go away is the notion of corruption. And that's the thing I think that's really important in this discussion. We're watching a lot of corruption unfold lately. We've watched a lot of corruption unfold over many, many years. It's time to do away with that. So, yeah.
Who decides whether or not there's term limits? Is that
You guys do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we do.
You do. Yep. So how this works, what we did was last week we had a public hearing. We had a special meeting to open a public hearing. And what that is basically a discussion. We open it to the floor. Public can come in, make comments. You can write your comments in. The public hearing is still open. So at any point in time for any of the open meetings, you can come to the podium and speak to the dais and say, I want to say words about term limits, and then you can speak your mind about term limits. We'll take notes. Louisa takes notes. Eventually what we do is we close the public hearing after a period of time that's appropriate. I would imagine it's going to be a fair amount of time so that the town knows that we're talking about term limits and you should talk about it. Then what we do is we have to put it to public referendum. Now, depending how we do this will depend on whether or not the public referendum is required or permissive. If we decide to change the number of years, then it goes to a required public referendum, which means it goes on the ballot. And then you get to decide.
Right, everybody votes on it.
If we decide only to stagger, so it's more of an administrative thing, then what occurs is that we don't have to do a public referendum, we have to do a permissive referendum, which basically means you, the public, can challenge us. And if you go get signatures, just like we did with the judge last year, if you get signatures, then we have to put it out to ballot. And it can either go on the ballot in November or it can go in a special election, but it has to go out to ballot. But you have to petition for that to occur. So the one way it's required, it has to go to ballot, no matter what. The other way, you petition for it to go to ballot, and then it goes to ballot, and you're off to the races. If the permissive referendum isn't met, in other words, the proverbial you, the constituency, does not get the number of signatures required, or doesn't get any signatures at all, just nobody decides to challenge it, then the town board gets to vote. And then we can vote on, and it's 5 guys deciding whether or not there are term limits, or whether or not they're 4 years or whatever, 2 years, staggered, not staggered, all of that stuff. But that's the process. Are there any other thoughts about term limits in general? Just as an aside,
What
about 3 years?
3 years is tricky. Yeah, I mean, that's certainly something that we could consider. The reason it's tricky is because the state has just shifted gears. This entire exercise of a 1-year term is to put state and local elections on even numbers so that the turnout is better. And again, that's a turnout thing. The state government. And not for nothing, guys, here's something that I bet maybe some of you didn't know. How many people do you all think, actually, let me rephrase the question. Show of hands, how many of you think that more than 10,000 people voted in the last election?
No.
Show of hands, how many people think more than 5,000 people voted in the last election?
For the town.
For the town.
I think it was more like.
Show of hands, how many people think more than 3,000 people voted? The answer is 5,000 people.
Like that.
Who here knows how many people there are registered to vote in the town?
33,000?
30,000 people.
Really?
30,000 people.
Well, how many people live in the town?
33,000.
So what about, you mean, there's only 3,000 children?
33,000, no, not counting children.
Right, adults.
Adults.
So,
There are 33,000 people on the census, not counting households with children.
there's 33 people registered to vote.
30,000 people, as I understand it, there's 30,000.
It's possible. Yeah, I work for it.
Yeah, the town is bigger than you think.
But they
No,
never
I'm
come
not
out.
questioning the people, I mean, it just seems like there's gotta be like, if there's 33,000 people that live in the town, there would be 5,000 children, 10,000 children?
Well, there are.
Well, then you have to subtract that from the 33,000.
No, he's saying that's the adults. Yeah,
That's the adult number. That's the adult.
yeah, he wasn't counting
So
children.
there's 33,000 adults in the town?
Yep,
Okay, we don't count children.
no.
Non-voters. Non-voters. The storyline. is
Non-voter
how many
age.
voted. That's the
But I mean,
storyline.
the population
Don't miss
of
the
this town
headline.
is how many?
Yeah, out of 30,000 people,
5,000.
5,000 people.
Of 30. That's the story.
And that's because it's like an off year.
That's sad. That's
This is why, I can't stress enough, this is why it's really important to be engaged.
25,000 people didn't vote.
Yep.
25,000, yeah.
some country.
So the moral of the story, and we'll wrap it up here, is that the voting thing is really important. Getting out and getting involved is really important. The term limits thing helps to keep the corruption down because obviously there aren't a lot of people stepping up to run for office. And those individuals who do run for office, kudos to them because it's a hard job and it's a thankless job. But at the end of the day, it's a critical job. So it has to be done. But also, there are a lot of opportunities for temptation, and with a simple act of making sure that there's turnover, we can do away with some of that temptation. And that's, again, part of the motivation for me to get involved, was that it just was sad to me that it was the same faces over and over and over again, running unopposed.
For 2 decades.
Yeah. So these are some of the motivations for, yes, ma'am.
What are the committees and how do you become a member of the committee?
The committee list, I think, is posted on our website. Some of the committees, so we have an IDA that is going to be fleshed out. That doesn't have a lot of people on it, needs to have more people on it.
Industrial development.
Yep. We've got, there's an environmental conservation committee. There is the human rights committee. There, of course, are the boards, the planning board and the zoning board. Those have positions that are appointed. Every year, a number of positions comes up to be reappointed. Generally speaking, those are rotating positions. The same individuals on the planning board have been on the planning board for the better part of a decade. Some of them longer than that. So there are lots of opportunities to get involved. Some of those, the Master Plan Review Committee, which is ongoing, and also doesn't have a limit in terms of the number of people that can be on the committee.
What that committee does is it recommends ideas, topic gets brought up, doing something, then that is discussed amongst the group. And when a consensus is done, we write it out and then we pass it forward for the members of the board to look at it, to see if they want to go forward with it. A lot of times, I've been part of that committee for about 5 years. A lot of times it gets kicked back to us again, rethink it. So, which is fine, that's what we're supposed to do.
Noni.
There used to be.
Oh, I'm sorry.
There used to be a committee, or I don't know what you want to call it, for the golf course. And
Yeah, so,
it disappeared. I just wonder.
yep, that's called the Enterprise Committee, and that has all but dissolved. It doesn't exist anymore, partly because the golf course has been fully absorbed into the town's operational process. It sits under the DPW, but it sits alongside the DPW because it is an enterprise fund and not funded by the general fund, which means it has to stand alone. It's got to have its own income
Yeah, I
line.
understand that.
But because we have farmed that out, we farmed the service out altogether to Troon Golfing, there's no need for a committee because there's no guidance involved. Now it's just, do we pay the bill or do we not pay the bill?
But as, that is a town golf course.
Yes.
And even though Troon runs it, wouldn't it be a good idea to have a committee of residents that are interested in golf that can give feedback? Because, you know, you don't know what I think about what Troon's doing.
No, it's true, I
You might
don't.
want to hear it.
I'm sure we probably agree. Here's what I'm going to tell you. Absolutely. Absolutely. And so if this is an opportunity to create a new committee or rebirth a committee, that was the Human Rights Committee is the one that would be rebirthed too. We had, at one point in time, and this is a little surprising to me just because of my knowledge of Wallkill, because I've lived my entire life here, I was a little surprised to learn that Wallkill actually has a Human Rights Committee, or had a Human Rights Committee. It's defunct right now, but it did. And it was relatively active for a while, and then just sort of pittered away, partly because of leadership, partly because of organization, partly because of interest. Because, you know, if you're on a committee and it's not doing anything or it's not meeting at all, we had a housing authority committee, which specifically focused on affordable housing.
Could bring that back.
Yeah. So, and these are opportunities to maybe bring these committees back. Because, again, committees have some authority. That sometimes it's just advisory, which is perfectly fine. I think the Conservation Committee is an advisory committee. They advise the Planning Board. The Housing Authority Committee advises the Planning Board. These are important things. And because those committees no longer exist, there's no advising happening. So now the Planning Board is basically, I don't know, 11 guys kind of doing whatever they feel like is right. And, you know, most times they're not too far off the mark. Sometimes they are off the mark. And there's no governance there. So, short of a master plan. And we don't have an active master plan. We've got a committee, and we're working on a master plan, but we don't currently have an up-to-date master plan, which means we're working off of an outdated master plan. By the way, that master plan is outdated by almost a decade and a half.
Wow.
So, yeah. So, you know, we've got some catch up to do. So when I say I walked into the office here in 26 and said, "Hello, I'm back," how much could have gone sideways in 4 years? Turns out a lot. So the reaction to that is, well, okay, let's get in it and let's do what we need to do. Let's re-engage. Let's get these committees flushed out. Let's rethink the budget lines. Let's get the budgeting back in line with what the ratables are. Let's create funding mechanisms for the projected budget or for the projected revenue that are in line with projected revenue, where if it goes south by 2% or 6%, it's not the end of the world. These are the things that we have to do. This is good stewardship. And once those mechanisms are back in place and solid, then thank you very much, I'm done. Next person, please.
There you go.
You know, and if I want to stay in politics, I'll stay in politics. I'll do something different. Who knows? Something will open up, and maybe I'll be done. It's been an interesting first 2 years were a challenge, and the political dynamic has changed dramatically at town. But it's not easy because there are a lot of opinions, and some of those opinions are vehement.
Yeah. There we know.
So at the end of the day, you got to be willing to be in the muck and actually do the work, and that's part of the rough haul of getting people to commit to being a part of a committee or being an elected. But it doesn't take away the responsibility and, more importantly, the need. The need is the biggest thing. So, yeah, if you're interested in being a committee, please give my office a call. We'll get you on something for sure.
Okay, my last question.
Yeah.
What is that warehouse on Silver Lake Scotchtown Road?
Oh, yes. Yes.
Yeah.
That's
So
the big
that's
one.
one of the spec warehouses. It is currently being built without. It doesn't have a tenant yet, but
Big empty building.
it's an empty building right now. The hope is that they'll have a tenant before they're done being built. It's one of two. There's another warehouse that's going up at the top of the hill.
Why did you put a warehouse right there? And
They could ask their last.
So that's a decade-long conversation that started out with that piece of property having direct access to the highway. So 10 years ago, when the property was first sold, the expectation was that the new owner was going to tie in that warehouse directly to the highway off of exit 120, and there would not be any impact traffic-wise around that location, making it an ideal location because it's easy on, easy off to the highway for a warehouse. That's exactly what a warehouse wants to be. It wants to be close to the highway. It doesn't want to be inland at all. It wants to be close to the highway. Over the course of a decade, the discussion changed and the money changed, and then it became too expensive to do the tie-in into 17, and then I think at some point the state DOT got involved and said that they weren't interested in having what they call a spur off the off-ramp, and so that changed the dynamic. Also, the initial conversation about widening 17 to be 86 changed and then stalled, and now it's restarted again. So that's how we got there, and that's how that warehouse got there.
But we approved it in the town.
Yes.
Before we knew this information solid.
Yes, that is correct. That is correct. The expectation was that there was going to be a spur, and then the expectation was that when there wasn't going to be a spur, that the rerouting, the traffic route, was thought out in such a way as to be the least impactful.
Let's wait and see.
Well, I think there might be some issues around that for sure, but yeah, that's how that happened.
But nobody knows who's going to be in those.
Correct. Those as far as I know, they do not have tenants yet.
it seems like before you approve a warehouse, don't you want to know what business is going on?
That's the idea. I mean, I think if there's any conversation further about the Walmart thing, that the upside to Walmart is if there's no world, it's not going to be Walmart.
It's Walmart.
Yeah, it's going to be that.
So you know it's going to be active.
And for good or for bad, like I'm going to tell you right now, I get on and off the exit at Amazon. That's when I'm doing my gig down at the shop at the theater place. I get off of what used to be exit 5, right down off of Montgomery. And that surprisingly has not been terribly impacted by the traffic going in and out of Amazon. Now there is traffic, that's not to say that there isn't traffic, but it is not as egregious as I thought it might be when it was being proposed. So the same holds true at the Dynarex warehouse, the big, large warehouse just before the bridge on your way out to Goshen off of Goshen Turnpike.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's open.
that's partially
Yeah,
rented.
it's operational. But there's just, the truck traffic is just not as robust as you think.
If you enjoyed this video, please remember to like, share, and subscribe. It really helps to support the work we're doing and helps others find the show. We'd also love to hear from you, so please remember to leave us a comment and let us know what you think. And just a reminder, every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern is our live stream where you can join us, interact, and share your thoughts in real time. Lastly, we truly appreciate this growing community and look forward to bringing you more content in the future. Thanks so much for watching.